Start,
Okay, yeah,
it should say recording.
Yeah, it's recording.
Okay, I mainly wanted to get the motor on there, to get the Volkswagen Bug motor on there, but I also am going to show you a couple other things that use internal combustion engines. All this stuff can be found in this magazine, and I'm going to do a separate lesson on that for the people that want to read it or see it. It's called Moving Goods on People on Land. But all of these motors, for a lot of people, this will be the first time that they see a piston with a connecting rod that goes down to a crankshaft. Okay? The first thing I'm going to mention is this is a good way to remember how the engine works. If you look at the crankshaft, you push down on pedals on a bike, they are also hooked to a crankshaft. The crankshaft turns the sprocket, which turns the chain, and turns the back tire. So I always say that on an engine, the pistons are like your feet on a bike, pushing down, making it go, except on an engine, it's internal combustion engine. They have the pistons that are exploded by the gas that goes into the cylinder. The spark plug ignites it, forces it down. When it goes down, it makes the engine turn the crankshaft. So this is called an internal combustion engine. Okay? These are from a two-stroke engine. Some motorcycles and jet skis are two-stroke. This is a four-stroke. Okay? This is a Volkswagen Bug motor. This is a very unique motor because in the Volkswagen Bug, it is air-cooled, not liquid-cooled like most cars. It's got the engine in the back rather than the front. They did that for traction. It's rear-wheel drive with the engine in back. And it is a horizontally opposed four-cylinder motor. It is just like working on an airplane engine. The airplane engine is also air-cooled with opposed cylinders. These are the cylinders from the Volkswagen Bug. Okay? One other thing that's very unique about the Volkswagen Bug and all the Volkswagen air-cooled engines is they have removable cylinders. So if you have a bad piston in a cylinder, normally this is all cast into part of the engine block, and you can't remove individual cylinders. On the Volkswagen Bug, you can take off one particular cylinder if you're having a bad cylinder and replace just the one. Okay? This one had 3 bad cylinders, so I replaced all 4 of the old the old pistons and cylinders. These are the old ones. You can see they were burnt up, with 4 new ones. These are the new cylinders, and these are the new pistons. So these will go onto the block. I said this is a horizontally opposed 4-cylinder motor. Most motors are either straight inline or they're in a V shape. Okay, a V6, a V8, a V10, or a V12. Something that's kind of interesting about that is Henry Ford came up with the idea for the V8 engine. He told his engineers to go in the shop and design it, and they said, "Henry, it's impossible." And he said, "Don't come out until it's possible. Get back in the shop and work until it is possible." And they went back in, they said, "But how can we make it possible when it's impossible?" And they said, "Maybe he just wants us to have a different frame of mind, saying that we think we can do it, we just haven't figured out how." They came out and said, "Henry, it's possible, we haven't figured out how to do it yet." And then he let them go home and get some sleep. Okay? He also came up with the famous quote from that incident called, "Whether you think you can or think you can't, you're right. If you think you can do something, you're right, you can do it. If you think you can't do it, you're right, you probably can't do it." Okay? So that was kind of his famous quote from that. Another one of his famous quotes, it's more of a marketing quote, was, "I will sell you a car in any color you like, as long as you like black." He made all his cars black, and he could do that because he didn't have any other competition. He really didn't invent the car. He invented more of the assembly line and mass producing the car. Once he did that, he realized that people didn't have enough money to buy them, though, so he had to kind of create a market for his own product. He allowed his own employees to become the market for his product. Okay, on this Volkswagen motor, this is a 4-cylinder, horizontally opposed, air-cooled motor. This is a dual port. I have the heads off it right now, the cylinders off. You can see the crankshaft here. Crankshaft has these connecting rods that go to the piston that's inside the cylinder, and when the gasoline is fired by this wire, that's the spark plug that got hooked to it, it fires, it explodes the gasoline, pushes the piston down, which turns the crank, and that turns the crankshaft and makes the car go. Okay? This engine is only held together by 4 bolts into the Volkswagen motor. It has 4 bolts that go into the transmission. On the other side, I'll kind of spin it around a little bit here. It has 4 bolts. First thing I'm working on a car, you got to have a good engine stand. I have this one out here, and I have the red one in there. You want to have gloves. If you're handling a lot of the stuff, you can either use plastic gloves, rubber gloves, or a good set of leather gloves, and the right shop equipment. Okay, that's why I always wear my Carhartt so I won't get them all dirty. Next, I always wear my safety glasses. These are Schwood safety glasses, which are made out of wood. And then when we're outside and it's bright like this, these sunglasses also have a built-in camera, because I like to record a lot of different things. So I press a button and they record. I wanted to mention a couple things that you should know about car engines. 3 things you need to start any gas engine is gas. And when I say gas, I don't just mean gas like gasoline, but the acronym GAS. You need gasoline, air, and spark. GAS, gas. You have to have gas or some form of fuel. You have to have air, because it needs to breathe. You can't run a car engine on the moon unless you bring your own oxygen. And you need to have spark. So if your mower won't start, or your motorcycle, or whatever, those are the 3 things you check for. Is it getting gas? You can't always trust the gas gauge. Thank you. You can't always trust the gas gauge. Sometimes gas gauges go bad, sometimes the sensors go bad, and they might say you have a full tank, but you don't. You might have gas in the engine, or in the gas tank, but there's none in the fuel line. You could have a clogged fuel line. You could have a clogged fuel filter. The fuel pump could be bad. It's not pushing the motor, the gasoline from the back gas tank to the motor. So you check your gas. One way that you can do that easily is to just take the air cleaner off, put a little bit of gas down there, what they call starting fluid, which is really ether. A lot of people say never use starting fluid, but if you do, it can be explosive, so you want to be real careful on it. If you still doesn't start after you put some starting fluid down there, then it could be air. As you have the air filter off, look at it, inspect it, make sure that you can see sunlight through it, hold it up to the light, make sure you can see sunlight through it. If it's too dirty, it won't breathe, okay? Now, if you've checked for gas and air, still won't start, now check for spark. By spark, you can just take the spark plug off, hold it against a grounded part of the engine, turn it over, and you will see a light blue spark, okay? So it will be one of those 3 things, with the exception of 2 engines I've ever had in my life. I've had over 76 cars, and all of them would start as long as I had gas, air, and spark. Years ago I had a Chevy Blazer that it had all 3 of those, but they were not going in the right time. The timing was off. The timing chain skipped a link and it was off, so it was not all happening at the right time. This is the 2nd time this has happened with this motor. I was getting gas, air, and spark, but it did not have enough compression. The seal between the pistons and the cylinders was not good enough. This piston had a crack in it. One of them had bad rings. It's a very tight fitting between the cylinder wall and the piston. So you have these rings on there. They have to keep a tight seal. When you put a motor together, you make sure that the crack in the rings is never lined up with one another. Okay? You don't want the gap in the ring to be in line, like with this gap, with the next one. This one has 3 rings, so you would put them 120 degrees apart. One gap is here on this side, the next one's 120 degrees off, and the last one's 120 degrees off that, because a circle always makes 360 degrees. If you only have 2 rings on there, they can just be straight across from one another, 180 degrees apart. Okay, that's a real important concept. So you can see this is a 4-stroke, 4-cylinder motor. You can see the crankshaft down inside the engine. Then these are the connecting rods that connect the piston to the crankshaft. And if you're wondering why they're always burnt on top, the pistons are burnt on top because when the spark plug ignites the gasoline, it's very hot. So you can look there and it's always burnt on the top of the piston. Okay? And I've actually burnt holes through piston all the way, it got so hot. Okay? Think of this, like I said, like a bicycle. On a bicycle, you are the motor. You're pushing down on the pedals, which makes it go. Makes the crank go. Okay? So that turns the chain to the sprocket, whatever. So this concept in there is exactly the same on a bike as it is on a car. Okay? I've used this analogy for years, saying this is the same on a bike as it is in a car, so much that I wanted to put a bumper sticker on my car that said burn fat, not fuel. And I got researching this a little bit and found that there is 31,000 calories in a gallon of gas. So you have calories stored up in your body. You can use those to propel a bike, just like a car can use gas to propel a car. Okay? What was interesting, I did this experiment to see how many calories were in a gallon of gas. I came up with 27,000. I looked it up on the internet and said that there's really 31,000 calories in a gallon of gas. And it said that cars are very fuel efficient. If they get 50 miles per gallon, the human body gets between 250 to 300 miles per gallon. And if you put yourself on a bicycle, you get between 700 to 900 miles per gallon. So it's a good idea to ride the bike, save gas, save the environment, but I know sometimes you got to drive, okay? Now, most of the gasoline goes in a car to propel the car, not the person inside it. It's very wasteful. If you take an engine like this and put it on a bike, I don't know if you can zoom into this one or not, on the bike here. I'm going to just kind of zoom in. That bike engine gets around 170 miles per gallon, because most of the power on that is going towards actually moving the person and the bike. It's not wasted moving the car. Most of the fuel used in a car is used to move the car, not the person. Okay? But all these motors are the same, whether it is, that's a 2-stroke motor that goes on the bicycle, a 4-stroke, horizontally opposed, air-cooled motor like in the Volkswagen Bug, or the lawnmower, a little 1-cylinder motor. Okay? And then also we get into some alternative power where we use electricity for the power rather than gasoline. An example of that is this little Zap car. Move out of the way just real quick there, please. This is an electric car called a Zap. It stands for Zero Air Pollution, and it is a 72-volt powered car. Okay? And I've had a few of those now, and still looking for the ultimate vehicle. Okay? Let's go ahead and stop there.